have now fallen to their lowest level in more than 3 years, and industry experts hope that it will help break the stalemate that has kept reluctant sellers from selling and would-be buyers from buying. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is with us now on this. All right, Vanessa, how low are we talking?
Yeah, we're talking about the lowest level in more than 3 years. So the average rate for a mortgage, according to Freddie Mac this week, 6.06%. That is down significantly from a year ago when mortgage rates were above 7%. And if you look at this line chart on your screen right now, you can see, hopefully, that we're exactly where we were 3 years ago. The left-hand side of your screen in January of 2023 and the right-hand side of your screen in January of 2026. That's encouraging news for home buyers, prospective home buyers who may have been waiting for mortgage rates to fall back closer to that 6% level. Why this is happening? Well, it could be pointing to the fact that President Trump did direct the purchase of $200 billion of mortgage bonds, and that was designed to lower rates. So some experts saying that is why we're seeing these lower rates today. Real estate agents and experts, as you say, are hoping that this starts to actually move the market. Sellers willing to sell and buyers willing to get into the market. But what is this going to mean for everyday Americans who may be thinking about buying a home? Well, if you're buying a home, let's say $450,000, you're going to do a 30-year fixed mortgage. You're going to put 20% down. Well, a year ago, you were going to pay a monthly payment of about $2,400. Now, this year, January 2026, you're looking closer to $2,100, $2,200. That's a savings of $230 a month, and that is significant if you're looking to spend money on other things like groceries or a car payment.
There were two other numbers that jumped out to me today that also, if they hold, portend positive outcome for them this year, and it was wage growth and inflation. Wage growth in January was 3.7%, inflation 2.7%. So prices are never going to reset back to, say, 2016 or 2017. That's not going to happen. But what you want to do is have people's wages outstripping inflation. That actually happened in January. So you have a smaller government, an increasing private sector, wages outstripping inflation, median rents are down, the lowest in 4 years. The stock market is up over 50,000. That does help a lot of people who are active investors and also people that have 401ks and pensions, et cetera, et cetera. So if I were in their shoes and telling a story, there's plenty here to tell. And, you know, if what their predictions are about a boom in 2026 come true, you can see how this might turn around for them in the election cycle.
Look, I'll say this for Trump. He's got this idea that America is still the biggest swinging dick in the world. And we have not used our power as much as we should. That's what the tariffs are about. We have the power to change these people's, other nations' trading practices with us, some of which were out of line. I'm surprised that people went along with it as much as they did. So he wasn't completely wrong about that. He said, look, NATO hasn't been paying their fair share. I'm going to make them do that. He wasn't wrong about that. And I'll tell you this, one thing about him that I know, I'm not going to tell you how I know, but a lot of people have seen the same thing. He really does hate war.
Jobs data is ridiculous. Blowout numbers. 130,000 new jobs versus 55,000 expected. Unemployment rates down. Wages are going up. And our favorite at Breitbart News, the federal government lost 34,000 jobs. Pretty amazing stuff. This ties into so much of the agenda. But your reaction?
Well, the president is driving growth in America, right? I mean, you think about how you drive growth. You cut down your imports, right, by tariffing them. You drive your exports by opening all these foreign markets and driving their tariffs down, right? And those two things obviously drive economic growth. Then you bring $18 trillion. The president loves that number because it's monstrous. $18 trillion of domestic investment, all these factories being built here. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a manufacturing rebirth in America. You're going to get construction jobs blowing out the doors, and those are going to be followed by manufacturing jobs coming. So I think you're going to get the greatest growth the United States has ever seen.
You said you inherited a mess from President Biden when it comes to the economy. But at what point is it on you? At what point are we in the Trump economy?
Oh, I'd say we're there now. I'm very proud of it. 5.6%. You know, we have a GDP of 5.6 despite a shutdown. We had a 42-day shutdown. They call it the Democrat shutdown. And because of that, I lost 1.5 points. I would have been at a 7 GDP, which hasn't been seen, I don't know, ever, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And I think 26 is even going to be better. You know, we have hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into our country. Actually, trillions. $18 trillion is being invested in our country as we speak. And there are factories and plants and thousands of businesses being built all over the country. Nobody has ever seen it. I just spoke to President Xi of China. Nobody has ever seen anything like what's happening right now in America.
When will we see those jobs and those factories open? Because manufacturing has been down.
Well, you're already seeing it in construction because they're all building. You know, we have factories being built, car plants are coming in from Canada, coming in from Mexico. They're leaving Germany, Japan. They're all coming into the United States. And you're seeing it in your construction numbers. And, you know, the plant, we have to build them. And the plants are under construction.
In your term, you think those plants will open in your term?
They'll be opening up over the next year and a half, yeah.
Well, hooray for the golden age. Let's start there. It seems that slowly but surely we are getting past the decayed economy of the Biden administration. But the truth is we could be doing a whole lot better if the Federal Reserve would have aggressively lowered rates like they could have done a while ago. You have to think of the Fed as a spigot. And what they can do is that they can either turn the flow of water on, they can slow the flow of water down, or they can completely stop the flow of water. That is what the rate does. The rate is what controls the flow. So when you are artificially manipulating the rate, what you are doing is you are artificially manipulating how fast and how large the actual economy can grow, which is not the mission of the Fed. The Fed is not supposed to manage the economy. The Federal Reserve is supposed to manage the money supply. They have overstepped their mission, and no president has been bold enough to put that cat back in the bag. The only person who's even tried and been bold in his criticism has been Trump. But we could be doing much better than we are if people understood that they are being held back. These rates are holding them back, and they're holding the wealth of the country back. And the wealth of the country is a direct impact on you. You cannot have a capitalist society where you have a Federal Reserve managing the economy. The two cannot work. They will live in opposition. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be some oversight of the money supply. I think the founders wrote an excellent prescription for how we could do it. But if that's something we need to look at, that's fine. But we do have to realize when the Federal Reserve gets outside of their intended mission and begins to start basically putting up winners and losers in the economy, that is not that mission. That is not their job. They are they're operating outside of the scope. And somebody should have the authority. I don't know, go look at their charter, but somebody should have the authority to say something to them and put them back in their place.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The video and what Celeste is adding to the conversation. I look back at what CNN was talking about, and I've noticed this for a few years now, especially when I was working in finance and really had to dive into these numbers on a regular basis. The news will take one fact, just one number, and say the economy's good or the economy's bad because this one number went up. And it's whatever typically is going to match their narrative and whatever they want to either support from the administration or go against. Fox typically supports the right, CNN supports the left. You guys can go back and look at this, but the problem is it's much more complex than that. If you look deeper into the numbers on any quarter-over-quarter basis, month-over-month basis, if you're not looking at not just the unemployment, not just the wage growth, but the GDP, if you're looking at the repo rate, the interest rate, and knowing the difference between a lot of those things that Celeste is talking about, then you can get an overall picture of what's going on in the economy. The issue is we don't tell Americans that. Instead, we say, you know what? We're going to assume that people won't understand the deeper complexes of what happens with their money, by the way. And so we're going to say something that aligns with whatever our donors are going to support so we can continue to stay on the air as entertainment. And she is right on one last point. I just have to double down on it because it's nice to hear somebody point this out. The Fed made a mistake back in 2021, 2022 timeframe. Whenever C-19, the pandemic, went through the United States of America, they did exactly what the Fed has always done, which is quantitative easing. They restricted, to her point, the flow of money and the ability in which you can get a loan, the ability in which you can put money down for collateral and everything else that the Fed does. The issue is it wasn't a typical environment like it was during the 2010s where you could get a house for basically a stick of gum and be able to live in it for the rest of your life. This was because of supply chain constriction, because of the pandemic. Y'all remember the toilet paper. And it's because a lot of money was printed, given away to other countries, and never circulated again in the American system. We're still waiting for a lot of that money to even have a prayer of circulating through. So this hot economy suddenly slammed into a brick wall. When you have an executive office that's able to say, hey, we're going to find ways to raise money in different and unique ways, and we're going to restrict the amount of spending that we have in certain categories while still understanding you need to be able to spend money in order to sustain this economy, because you always hear this saying, well, he's spending so much more money. You need to understand the economy and how it works. You have to go down to the 101 principles of economics. That's why we're starting to see some major changes. Small stuff for everyone here, including myself, like at the gas pump, and then larger stuff when it comes to manufacturing that's going to have echoes in the future, depending on the midterm elections. That's what I kept thinking as I listened to all these videos that you were playing just now is, it's going to be real critical for this midterm election, as it always is for any president, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, because now either Trump is going to continue to stall, he already has, in a lot of cases, y'all know federal judges don't typically like him, or will he have a way forward to be able to continue to enact these policies, which is why I always keep, and I'll land on this, I always keep whatever my verdict is for a president saved until the end of the term. Let's see if it's just 1 month of great economic growth, or if we're going to have a pattern quarter over quarter, year over year, that's going to show us an actual age. You said golden age, that's fine. An actual age, or just a temporary situation, depending on what happens next in the market.
Yeah, I'll just say I voted for this.
Yes.
As someone who has been involved with real estate and who felt the effects of rising interest rates and who still has an investment property on the market that he would like to sell, this is good news that the rates are going down. With that said, I will just say this is the first time we've really experienced a president that really puts America's interests first and Americans' interests first. And I know that's kind of been a slogan about America first, but that truly is what's happening. And the contrast that we're seeing from compared to previous administrations, we realize, man, what were they doing? If they weren't making policy to get, manufacturing back in America, they weren't establishing tariff rates that were benefiting American and American workers and making sure we had a fair trade agreement with countries, then what exactly were they doing? But it's such a breath of fresh air to see this administration operate in a way that puts America's interests first. And we're seeing it, Celeste said a golden age. This could have been happening, but we can get into the whole woke mindset, but when you have a globalist woke mindset, you always have to diminish your power. You have to give up your privilege and you have to benefit others. And that's what we've been seeing other administrations do. And we have an administration now that's come in and saying, no, my job is to benefit America and American people, not some globalist system, not to increase jobs in some South American country. No, my job is to ensure that jobs come back to America. American workers have good quality paying jobs, and we're not outsourcing our manufacturing to cheap labor, that only benefits large corporations who can go somewhere, get cheap labor. Think about this. What other country, name a country or a business that ships their manufacturing to America to build something and then export it back into their own country?
Come on.
That's what we had American companies do. Hey, leave here, go take all of your business down to cheap labor in Mexico and South America and China, and then just import it back in with hardly no tariffs on it.
That's right, Kevin.
That's what we've been doing.
Right.
We have foreign companies that build things in America, but they build those things in America for the American economy and the American market.
Yep.
Japan doesn't come over here, build cars, and then import cars back into Japan. They don't do that. right?
That's right.
But for some reason, we have been doing that to ourselves. And I'm just thankful this administration has just kind of put a stop to it. This is common sense. And hopefully this is what Americans come to expect from our leaders.
For some reason, you know what the reason is. Somebody got paid off.
Yep.
You don't get to do that without somebody getting money in their pocket for doing it. Now, I'm no expert on economics, but I do know that there's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve. And I think if you read The Creature of Jekyll Island, you would get an understanding of what's going on. I think that at some point, the American government should take that power back, because that is a problem. But my point here is that we need to give Trump his kudos. We need to give him his praise. And I think that because there's so many people in powerful positions suffering from TDS, they refuse to give him that credit. You look at the news reports, you look at the TV programs, the news talk shows. No one's going to give him the credit he deserves. Rachel Maddow was trying to make it look like it was doomsday. Our economy is going down. You know, when Biden was in office, you heard nothing. It was paradise. It was getting better. Everything's getting better and better and better. As bad as it was getting, they kept saying it was getting better. But now Trump's in office and he's doing what he should be doing. Everything's getting worse. So we got to stop listening to these crazy people. Crazy people are not people you're supposed to be listening to when you want to find out how our nation is doing. Let's keep our eyes on the prize.
Absolutely. And Kevin, you asked what the goal of the previous administration. I believe it was to fast track us towards that Agenda 2030, one government rule, where the people are broke, busted, and disgusted, and we are in dire need of them. And then they can basically enslave us. And
That's
Crystal
right.
says it all the time. You'll own nothing, you'll
And
have
be
nothing, and you'll be happy about
right.
it.
Yep.
And you'll be happy with whatever little trinkets we decide to give you. I'm not an economist or by any stretch of the imagination, but I do remember what my 401k looked like during the first Trump administration. I remember how affordable the rates were, because I bought my house, during that time frame, during the first Trump administration. I remember what the job market looked like. As somebody that worked in the staffing world, I was a headhunter for a long time, for like 15 years. I'd never seen the type of sign-on bonuses that people were receiving. I mean, they were giving $1,000, $5,000 sign-on bonuses for people to work fast food restaurants up here in the Baltimore and the Maryland area. They were doing that, and I heard that around the country. I worked in the tech space. I seen people, get sign-on bonuses as high as, $80, $90, $100,000, and full packages that were just out of this world. I had never seen anything like it. And in about a year and a half, maybe a little less, of the previous administration, all of that came to a screeching halt. All of it. Not only that, they redefined what a recession is. They redefine, and then the layoffs started to happen. I fell a victim of that. I worked for a large tech company back in the day, and it was a great gig. And you could see it happening. You seen Microsoft lay off. You seen Amazon lay off. You seen Google lay off. And I knew, I was like, and they're like the top tier, and we were like a second tier, like a second tier tech company. So I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh man, we're on the chopping block. It's coming in about maybe 8 or 9 months after that. That's when it happened to us. So, and then when you think about how much money people had at that time frame prior to the previous administration getting in office, people's savings accounts were flush. And people were making more money than they had ever made in their lives, especially when you start talking about Black Americans. You're talking about the lowest unemployment rate that we'd ever seen. We're talking about the highest percentage of Black homeowners in the country. It happened during that administration. And people just act like that either one, it didn't happen, or they forgot. Right. They forgot. It's just crazy. So I'm excited about what we're hearing. I'm looking forward to things continuing to get better. Because we know, especially out here, a lot of people, I don't know how much you guys know about Maryland, but a large majority of the people that live here work for the federal government in one way or another, right? So a lot of those folks, they have lost jobs. So here, there's been people that have been feeling pain of some of the decisions from this administration. The problem, though, is because this is a blue state, it's not a great state for private sector business. So we don't have the private sector business to take the place of the jobs that the federal government, that the federal government had that employed a lot of the people here. And it's unfortunate for a lot of folks here. Hopefully something changes, with Governor Moore. I'm on my way out the door because these taxes are crazy, but I'm excited about the direction of the nation.
I'm like Minister Denzel. I'm not, an economist like AT, and historian like Celeste, they're fully knowledgeable. But what I will say watching those clips was exactly what Celeste said. I 100% agree, because in everything that you just watched, you saw that we are in the golden age, and we could be so much further. Not only because of the Federal Reserve situation, and thank God Jerome Powell is done on May 2026. Thank God he's done, but also for you get to see how destructive the left is, because they're so hateful. They're so hateful. They will cut off their nose to spite their face.
That's my
They
point. That's
actually
my
would.
concern.
And Americans should actually stop and realize, hold on, because if you actually pay attention, they hate Trump so much they would destroy America just to
That's
prove their
right.
point.
Oh, you
That
stole my
means
fire.
they would destroy all of us just to prove their point and get what they want. They don't
Yes.
care about the American people, because let's just
Listen.
be real. We could be further along in the golden age if they would work with Trump, and instead
That's
of him
right.
having to fight everybody every 5
Come on.
seconds, and if they stop to realize, oh my gosh, what he's implementing here, wow, mortgage rates are like this. Oh my goodness, jobs are coming back. Oh my goodness, my 401k is looking better. If they actually stopped and said, let's work with him because he's bringing in things that is actually helping us, instead of yelling racism every 5 seconds or fascists every 5 seconds, which is just delusional, especially the fascist and the dictator. Because again, fascist dictator, if you were in those countries, you probably couldn't be yelling those type of things, but people love to keep saying that. If you really were in that type of country, you wouldn't be marching up and down the street yelling "No kings." You couldn't do that.
That's
But
right.
because y'all are so delusional and don't know what that actually means, you make those statements. So we could have been way further along if he didn't have to continually fight the people on the left. And I wish people would wake up and see it, because as many people say, Trump could go and discover the cure for cancer and every
That's right.
disease out there, and they will still say how horrible this man
That's
is.
right.
He can make sure that everybody has a huge nest egg that they can pass on from generation to generation to generation, and they will continue to say how hateful and horrible this man is. If you are yelling about racism, you are not even in the intellectual conversation. You are in the stupid hamster in the wheel conversation.
Yes.
Because when you are talking about racism, you ain't even touching the money situation, because the true thing is the have and the have-nots. And Trump is trying to make sure America first that we have, that the middle class doesn't disappear, that we don't become slaves to globalist system. That's what he's trying to make sure, because regardless of what y'all think, y'all like to say Trump has changed. People have said when he became a Republican, he became racist. Really? Because if you go back to the 1980s and 90s when Oprah was interviewing Trump, he talked about how much he loves America and how much the only reason he would run is to help America, because this is his country and he loves America.
Right.
The same thing he said back then
He's
is
doing.
the same thing he is saying today.
That's right.
As I told y'all ran and supported a known racist who truly hated Black people, who stood for being a segregationist, who spoke at a Grand Master of the KKK. You supported that man proudly.
Yep.
And he destroyed America. He gave over everything to everybody outside. It wasn't America first, it was America never. That's what his ideology was. So he kept saying, save the soul of the nation. No, he was selling the soul of the nation. That's what he was doing.
I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are your thoughts about any of this? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on to all so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. That link's in the description box below. And as always, keep God first. Stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you all next time. Peace.
It is God who arms me with strength. Yeah, I'm battle ready. He trains my hands for battle. My heart stays steady. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory. Through my Lord Jesus Christ, fear can't live in me. I was down to the dirt, red clay on my shoes, old pain in my shirt, oh so bruised. In the Lord hit my chest, kicked air from my breath, put power in my step.